Twilight's Nightmare, Chapter 29, Part 4. Starlight let her eyes close for a moment, all the complexity of the spell sorting and ordering themselves in her mind. It was second nature to her to adjust all the needed variables.
Over 1,000 years?
She almost wanted to laugh. Twilight said that she did have enough power, and it wasn't like her to be wrong about the math. She pushed power into her horn as she started the spell. She had nowhere near enough magic to reach that far back. A blazing magenta light illuminated the room as Twilight lit her horn, pouring power into the spell.
There is so much!
Starlight's eyes went wider and wider. It was an itch, or a tickling warm sensual caress that she couldn't quite pin down the sensation of ran through her horn. She almost wanted to giggle or moan with the sensation, but she couldn't quite figure out which to do. Twilight slowly pulled her head back, leaving a sun-bright line of magic connecting their horns. A cocky, knowing grin sat on her muzzle. As the draw of the spell increased, Twilight didn't even react, as more and more power flowed in from the alicorn. Twilight slowly pulled her head back, leaving a sun-bright line of magic connecting their horns. A cocky, knowing grin sat on her muzzle. As the draw of the spell increased, Twilight didn't even react, as more and more power flowed in from the alicorn. Starlight may not have had the same head for numbers as Twilight did, but she knew when she was feeling so much power that numbers ceased to matter. Once again, she was grateful that she battled the Princess of Friendship. And not the armored alicorn that she knew could casually throw death spells around that had escorted her to the temple. Despite the calming presence of Twilight, the increasingly intoxicating feeling of the unlimited power bending to her will caused a fearful shudder to shock Starlight's body. If anything even went slightly wrong, she knew she would be dead, completely desegregated before she even knew what happened. A single wing wrapped around her in a reassuring embrace. Starlight leaned into it, using the physical contact to ground herself in the moment. Pushing aside her fears, Starlight turned her attention to the room around her. The damage of centuries was restored in a few heartbeats. The sheer amount of power being channeled through Starlight's horn should have had her rolling on the floor in pain or have blown her head clean off, but neither happened. It took a few moments to realize that most of the power was not flowing directly through her horn's ley line. Instead, it was perfectly mirroring the patterns that it was making so closely that any adjustments Starlight made were instantly copied by Twilight's spellwork. If Twilight had said what she was going to try or how much power she would be using, Starlight would have refused outright. But she was glad that she didn't. Just seeing this magic was giving her so many new ideas that she might be able to use. Starlight turned her attention away from the arcane and focused on her mundane senses. If it was not for the safety on the spell, she could reach out and touch it. Ponies rushed around, preparing for some sort of feast. A little of the food seemed familiar, but for most of the dishes she had almost no idea what they were. Twilight trotted over and reached out to snatch a star-shaped confection from the side, her hoof passing right through it. Twilight growled, before shaking her head. Twilight sat on her haunches, looking around, fondly casting her eyes over the ponies. It almost seemed as if she knew them. A dozen scrolls burst into the air around her, each picking a pony and following them with text appearing upon them. Starlight glanced at one. It was recording everything that the pony was doing, even sketches were drawing themselves. As more text was written, the scrolls kept getting longer and longer. Twilight looked to the doorway and let out a thoughtful hum.
Stay here,
Twilight said in a gentle voice, but the edge of command was firm. Starlight felt her body's unwillingness to move, despite her mind's desire to follow and find out what her teacher was up to. A pulse of magic reinforced the time spell. Perhaps Twilight was just moving further afield? Another pulse, and one of the magical safeties was carefully parted. Panic rushed through Starlight. She had to do something, but channeling this much power left her paralyzed. She couldn't stop the spell without Twilight dialing back her magic, and the best result would be an explosion.
Did she plan this?
A blue aura enveloped the past's cookie jar and floated it over to the window. A young teenage Princess Luna had a huge victorious grin as she stole a hooful of ill-gotten cookies, before stealthily returning the jar to the top shelf. The main cook smiled, flicking her eyes towards the window. The rest of the staff did their best to keep their laughter silent as the alicorn of the night snuck away, apparently unnoticed.
She's gonna spoil the dinner again,
one of them said. A heavy pulse of magic made Starlight's eyes cross. It took a few seconds before she could see anything again. She sensed the safeties of the viewing spell were back in place. Twilight came in with a book, a few trays of plants, and a box suspended in her magenta aura. The proud look on her face fell slightly when she caught sight of Starlight's unhappy scowl.
Twilight, did you deliberately bypass the safeties?
Twilight hung her head a bit. A bit of shame showed on her face.
Yes, I did.
Starlight's expression hardened as she leveled her gaze at Twilight.
I'm not so mad about the fact that you did it, considering the closed-loop nature of what I detected. I'm more mad about the fact that you spent 3 years convincing me that the safeties were critical so we couldn't affect the past. Then you go and exploit to change the past anyway!
She yelled.
Nothing was changed.
Twilight retorted with an edge of a growl to her voice, before taking a long calming breath. She continued, her voice sad and almost a whisper.
I needed ingredients that went extinct several hundred years ago. The recipe was lost. I didn't take anything from the past though. I just duplicated what was there. The seeds that I have are taken from a jar that was still here in the present, but the seeds had turned to dust. There's nothing missing to change anything. You say you're alright after what happened to you on the damnable altar, but the more I see of how you're acting, the more that I see that you are in fact not alright. You need help. If not from me, then get help from some pony, please.
Starlight finished her rant quietly, tears starting to well up in her eyes. A few warring expressions battled across Twilight's face, irritation winning for a moment before sadness claimed the day.
I'll do what you ask. I will arrange a meeting with Luna and Cadence. Why not Celestia?
Starlight asked, and a single mote of flame danced along Twilight's mane before it faded.
Haven't you heard?
She said, voice sounding hollow.
No.
Starlight felt her gut sink. For a moment, Twilight felt dangerous again.
The reason I'm not alright isn't because of the altar. It's because of what Celestia did to me.
As Twilight continued to explain, Starlight listened with growing horror. She had used mind control, used forbidden magic, but not for anything like that. She enslaved ponies, but she didn't cut up ponies' souls. To hear that Twilight was on the verge of forgiving Celestia was almost unbelievable. Most of what happened was the Warlock's fault, the same pony who assassinated the original Twilight with a book. If it was not for how terrible the whole situation was, she would laugh at the idea of the Princess of Books being killed by one. But none of this was a laughing matter. If she came across the Warlock, she would have words with him. Starlight was fairly sure that Twilight would forgive her for how much forbidden magic that she would use with those words. It would be for a good cause, though. At the end of her tale, Twilight seemed dead and listless. All the energy had fled from the powerful alicorn, and now she was a pony that Starlight could defeat. Even the power flowing to Starlight's horn weakened, causing the world of the past around them to lose most of its color. Starlight collected herself.
I can't bring myself to even imagine what that was like for you. I can't even wrap my mind around that, but that doesn't matter to me. You are my friend, and I'm gonna be here for you.
She said, as she pulled Twilight into a hug. Twilight let her eyes close, wrapping her wings around Starlight. Starlight's ribs creaked. She bit her lip as she was about to protest, but a few drops of warm liquid fell onto her back, stilling her complaints. Motion and a Trixie-like hat caught her attention. Looking over Twilight's shoulder, Starlight saw a young-looking star-swirled and not yet bearded poke his head into the kitchen and look around. Starlight took this as a sign to end her spell. Twilight effortlessly reduced the power in turn with her until they were once again looking at the ruins of the present. Starlight stroked Twilight's mane reassuringly. It felt odd to be the reassuring one. She would be talking to Princess Luna at the next available opportunity, assuming that she could still breathe after this alicorn great hug. Rainbow Challenger. Rainbow Dash was having a good day, at least until Trixie had appeared back in the center of Ponyville in a flash of Twilight's magic. The showmare looked shaken, her knees were trembling, and she checked her hat and cape. Rainbow sighed and grumbled for a moment, before slipping from her napping cloud and zipping down to the ground. Trixie jumped almost out of her cape. Rainbow had to struggle to keep her laughter to herself.
Hey Trixie, where'd you come from? I saw Twilight's magic bring you here, so where's she at?
Rainbow asked cheerfully.
Oh, the great and powerful Trixie can report that mare is insane. Yeah, she sometimes goes a little crazy. Anything new? Does she normally attack Timberwolves for fun and clap her hooves happily when a larger one shows up? Huh. Yeah, that's new. We got to safety via teleport and then Twilight teleported Trixie back here. That's the last I saw. To be honest, Trixie doesn't even know where I got teleported from in there. So she's in the Everfree?
Rainbow questioned.
Where else do you think Timberwolves would be around here? Thanks.
Rainbow nodded and flew off, her departure sending Trixie's hat flying off. It didn't take her long to do a quick flight over to the Everfree. 3 long scars could be seen from above, each over 100 ponies long. The howls of Timberwolves and the cries of the forest creatures could be heard, but there was no sign of Twilight. Fortunately, there were no blood or drag marks, nothing to make her think anything permanent had happened to the egghead. Rainbow knew a lot about what happened to Twilight, a lot of bad stuff. The injuries that covered her body when she returned to Ponyville were no laughing matter. It was amazing how she was already healed and moving around. Any normal pony would be in the hospital for at least half a year with the wounds that she saw. The shouting match with the princess was another crazy thing too. Now going out looking for trouble in the Everfree? This was not normal. Maybe she should have spent time to fetch Fluttershy for this, but there was no time. Doing another quick flyby over the forest, there was still no sign.
Where are you, Egghead?
An hour or so later, she saw Twilight happily trotting through the forest with Starlight following her. It didn't look like anything was wrong. Watching carefully, she studied her movements. Twilight was moving well. Every hoof placed just so as she kept a level and efficient gait through the uneven forest terrain.
What sort of book teaches that?
Rainbow said. Twilight looked straight up at her.
She heard that?
Rainbow thought with disbelief.
No, she must have seen me.
Just a test, she looked away and said,
Star Swirl's the worst mage.
Her world became filled with magenta light and then she was wet. Wet and cold. Somehow she was in the Ponyville fountain.
Okay, she could hear me. How the buck could she hear me? Maybe because you're shouting?
Rainbow pulled herself out of the water. A quick shake and a flick of her wings and most of the water was gone. A quick spin into the air would be enough to get rid of the rest. She quickly glanced over her feathers and they all seemed mostly in order. She would need a careful preening to make sure that she was in top-notch condition, but for daily flying, this was fine. That must be nice to have that kind of hearing sometimes, although you'd hear, well, some people trash talk you or someone else, or maybe your ears are just too sensitive, especially to loud noise. Either way, that must have been quite a surprise for her. Anyways, let's get on to our superb donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, Omicron Lyre, Chris, Michael Dale Moore, Dosbo, Delta Omega, Jack Hadge, RuneScythe9852, Madman Stan, Leslie Perkett, Drake Lovedragon, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGod12, Sorcerer Constantine, Hudzaza, Conver, and many more amazing people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.